Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Geocortex webinar for June 2017. My name is Paul Van Haren, and I'm a technical marketing lead at Latitude Geographics. It's my privilege to be here with you today for the next 30 minutes or so to talk about integrating business intelligence and data sources with Geocortex Essentials. So some of you may have attended last month's webinar where we covered the Cityworks extension that we offer with Essentials, but which is a great example of an integrated solution. Today we'll look further into how you can integrate your existing systems into Geocortex to streamline business processes and to get things done more efficiently. So we'll start with an agenda. I'm just going to start off with just a quick overview of Geocortex Essentials. I realize some of you are already existing clients of Geocortex, but for some of you who are not familiar with our product, I'd like to do just a quick summary of what Geocortex is to provide context for the content we're going to cover today. Secondly, we're going to talk about why you should integrate, or what are the reasons to integrate a Web GIS application with some of your existing systems. So over the course of the presentation today, hopefully you'll start to think about how bringing sort of spatial awareness to your non-spatial data will help you organize your organization, streamline key business tasks that you'd like to complete. We'll then move into more of the technical side of things, I guess. Some of the ways that Essentials integrates with your external systems. We'll then go over a few client examples, some of the stuff that's out in the real world today. And at the end, if there's time, we'll do a little bit of Q&A. Feel free to drop any questions inside of the GoToMeeting throughout the presentation. And if there's time at the end, I'll go back and kind of address those questions. If we don't have time to address those questions, we'll just do we'll follow up by email to each of your questions and answer them as needed. So the value of Geocortex Essentials. So Essentials is a versatile framework for extending Esri technology even further, enabling users to build and maintain a gallery of simple and powerful web mapping applications. So our model is always seeks to minimize hours people need to spend creating the capabilities and applications their organization wants, make it as easy as possible to maintain those capabilities and apps over time, and remain ideally positioned to embrace ongoing technology change. So the focus for us has always been ease of creation, ease of maintenance, and long technology future-proofing for application creators. So Essentials offers a ton of out-of-the-box tools and features. It's also highly customizable, and we'll see some great examples of that in today's presentation. So here's just a high-level, nice graphic of all the capabilities that Geocortex Essentials offers. Just to highlight a few examples, viewers, that's a big one. It's obviously where your web mapping tools are going to actually be visible for the end user. Tons of out-of-the-box features, tools, and widgets that can be also customized to your liking. We also have a native mobile app viewer that is installed locally on a mobile device, and which has offline sync capabilities. Search, we call it instant search. It basically indexes your map service data and has a huge performance increase when searching data on the map. So today we'll discuss in further detail workflow, data linking over here, and APIs, and some other configuration options that you have to integrate with these other systems. So first off, why integrate a GIS application with some of your existing systems? So big one, increases spatial awareness. Sometimes patterns can only be seen when visualizing data on the map. So by integrating these key business systems with the Geocortex applications, you gain the added element of spatial awareness. In a lot of cases, a spreadsheet of data is just not enough to, and spatial context is needed to make an informed decision. Leave your data where it is. by integrating with Geocortex, it allows you to leave your existing business data where it is. There's no requirement to replicate, move, or remodel your data. Leaving your data where it is allows those other systems to continue to manage the data as intended, and removes the need to manage the same data in multiple areas. Finally, streamline data access. So avoid those departmental silos that we sometimes see in organizations, and enable the data to flow between systems seamlessly. Providing a more efficient way to access information you need to make important business decisions. So with everyone working on the same data, conflicts are much less likely to occur. So methods to integrate with third-party systems. So these are some of the ways that Geocortex Essentials can integrate with your existing systems. Data linking. So data linking, creating data links to existing data management systems. This is an out-of-the-box setup. Allows you to configure a specialized query to third-party databases. You can customize the query as query string as defined as you want, and to make sure that you get the accurate information back. Workflow, which we'll go into further, again, a little bit more detail a little later as well. The workflow is included in your Geocortex license. Workflow now enables targeted, easy to use, step-by-step interactions for end users, and for developers, it makes these user experiences easier to build, manage, and evolve over time. It's also a key aspect of our future proofing strategy for application development. As we all know, technology changes quickly, so workflows are engineered to be technology agnostic. We're also going to talk about URL parameters, feature hyperlinking, as well as JavaScript APIs, which is essentially a script that creates a bridge between the browser and one or more platforms or systems. So let's start with data linking. So surprisingly enough, not all data gets managed in a Geo database. A lot of times key business data lives in a database controlled and maintained by another department. I'm sure some of you have experienced that before. Data linking enables administrators to establish a link between a spatial layer and an external non-spatial database table. So administrators can establish and store any number of data connections inside Essentials, Geocortex Essentials, to a variety of sources such as Oracle, SQL Server, really any data source supported by ADO.NET. Once a data connection to a database is established, a data link is then configured to relate a field in a spatial layer with a column in the external data source. So more specifically, when a data link is configured on a layer, a Geocortex Essentials REST API exposes an operation which allows a requesting client application to discover all external records related to a particular set of spatial features. This REST endpoint is exposed to the Geocortex viewers, where end users visualize the data associated with a spatial feature alongside the related data. So as an example, let's say you identify a polygon area within a Geocortex viewer. When you view the details of the spatial area, the system can automatically go to an internal database, retrieve additional non-spatial data for display. From an end user perspective, they see a rich set of data for the area, having no idea some of the data of the displayed fields are from the geodatabase attributes, and other fields are from separate databases. So the data is presented as a unified whole. They don't see any difference as far as where the data is coming from. It's all displayed in one unified whole. So as stated previously, sometimes looking directly at a data table or running a query against that table just isn't enough, and some sort of spatial context is required in your applications. URL parameters. So URL parameters can be used by third-party applications to launch a Geocortex application and perform a specific action related to data selected in the third-party application. So we can see some of these where you select a certain amount of fields in your system, your existing third-party system. Then that launches, creates a URL that launches the viewer, the Geocortex viewer, with those parameters. So those parameters could be set the specific extent on whatever items you chose in your third-party application, or to identify those areas, or to perform some sort of search within the viewer. So it's a sort of a predefined URL that's created from the external system. So URL parameters can also be processed by startup workflows. Again, we'll talk about workflows in a little bit here. Startup workflows are configured Geocortex workflows that are instructed to run upon startup. So when a URL query string parameters are present, these parameters can be passed to the startup workflow as arguments that determine the behavior of the workflow. So it could be unique situations where the startup of the workflow is determined by the assets of the map, or the arguments in the map. So as an example, let's say you created a Geocortex application to spatially visualize or automate a task. You could then provide a link from that application directly into your business intelligence system. So when the end user is interacting with the business intelligence system, they can then click that link, which automatically opens the Geocortex application, zooms in and highlights a specific entity of interest. And then from there, you could sort of automate a set of tasks, such as automatically buffering, searching, highlighting, or even creating a PDF report. So we'll look at some client examples on this a little bit later as well. So JavaScript APIs. So as stated previously, a JavaScript API creates a bridge between your browser application and other existing systems. So using this API, named commands and named events can be passed between systems, enabling rich and sophisticated integration scenarios. So these named commands and named events are viewer commands and events that are identified using a unique string name. So the string name can then be invoked from an external system. So it could be with JavaScript or via a workflow. There are over 100 named commands and dozens of named events that are all available within the Geocortex viewer. So just to kind of explain this a little bit further, so these commands are sort of run within or compiled via the integration module inside the viewer configuration. So there's two common scenarios for using the JavaScript integration module. So you can invoking a named command from JavaScript and then subscribing to a named event from JavaScript. So since commands instruct the viewer to perform an action and events alert any third-party application when an action has occurred, the JavaScript integration module supports real-time bi-directional integration scenarios between the Geocortex viewer and any third-party web map application. So looking at this diagram here, Geocortex can either be embedded in a third-party system, or the third-party system can be embedded into Geocortex. It's kind of work both ways. This integration would allow users to interact with information on the map and simultaneously visualize related third-party party data, charts, and graphs. We could take this step even further by providing a workflow to lead a non-trained user through a repeatable process to derive the desired results. So it doesn't always have to be a URL parameter or some sort of event. It can actually just trigger a workflow that guides the user through the process that they want to complete. So workflow. Very powerful piece of software that we offer, again, with the Essentials, Geocortex Essentials license. At its simplest, a workflow is just a sequence of activities that complete a task. However, there are several factors that actually affect the performance of a workflow or the effectiveness of a workflow. A simple workflow takes some inputs and performs a certain type of operation on them, from which produces the output. We see a lot of this. We still see a lot of GIS workflows that fit this pattern. The set of inputs is fed in at the beginning of the workflow. GIS operations are performed, and the outputs are available at the end. So Geocortex workflows can take it a step further, and by extending the model to general business processes. So your workflows can be made up of a combination of business activities and GIS activities. They're also interactive, so workflows can be paused and wait for input from the user in a form, and wait as long as needed to model your existing processes. Workflows based on the Workflow Foundation, Microsoft Workflow Foundation 4.5, which is part of obviously the .NET 4.5 framework. This allows you to leverage any existing knowledge you may have in .NET programming to create your own custom workflow activity. So you're not just restricted to the ones we shipped. There's 150 or so that we ship, but you can create your own custom ones if you see fit. So if we look at some of the Geocortex integrations, what workflow can do is combine some of the things we've already talked about. So combining data links and APIs and URLs, customized URLs inside of a workflow itself. So you can pass essentially through transaction tables, which is set through a data link. This is a common approach when integrating a third-party application and involves the reading and writing of unique session or transaction identifiers to a shared database, table, or schema. So typically a third-party application launches a viewer and then passes a unique ID. This ID is then passed to the workflow, which executes an appropriate database read operation to get the acquired data from the third-party application. So once this handshake is established, the two applications can share data via these transaction tables. So a lot of times we see this when Essentials or the viewer can't communicate with third-party system through HTTP requests. So we'll use the unique IDs to pass that information to the transaction tables. Integration via interoperability library. So since workflow is implemented in .NET, there's an opportunity to leverage any interoperability libraries or APIs to be deployed using workflow. And then integration with web services. So if the third-party application publishes a web service, the Geocortex workflow can integrate by calling the application's endpoints and could be used in a URL parameter. So this is an overall example of this. The user starts a workflow and is guided through a series of steps in the Geocortex viewer. The information supply for some of these steps can come directly from multiple BI systems and in combination with the spatial data from the map. So the workflow will request this information through an API call or a web request, for example, and display it to the end user on demand. From the end user's perspective, again, they're guided through a series of steps to achieve a result or answer a question, having no idea that the workflow may be retrieving and using data from different internal BI systems and geo databases to achieve the goal. So it's kind of the same message. The user's doesn't see it, but finds the data extremely useful and rich because it's coming from multiple data sources. Feature hyperlinking is an out-of-the-box feature, just represents a hyperlink in the Geocortex viewer interface that is dynamically generated by using a URL template that includes placeholders for layers field values with a feature from that layer. So it's sort of like token replacement to generate the URLs. So just again, as an example, going to our example where we display that polygon area, when the end user views the details of that spatial area, rather than pulling information from a BI system and displaying it, you can instead provide a hyperlink that when clicked will open that BI system and correct with the correct page and item and action pre-selected. So it's kind of, instead of pulling it from the third-party system and putting it in the viewer, you're generating a URL that points you directly to the third-party system. So it's going from viewer to system. Again, we'll see an example of that in a little bit. So some third-party systems, these are just examples. There's many more, but these are the types of systems that are kind of common. Virtually any third-party business system or data source you're currently using can be integrated into a Geocortex application. So let's talk about some of the third-party business systems that can be integrated. So ERP and land asset management. So a lot of times important financial asset and land information lives in completely different and unrelated systems. It's a common theme throughout this presentation where data is siloed throughout different systems. So integrating these systems with Geocortex allows you to update asset attributes directly in your application, map all asset related work orders for simplified route planning, and also update the status of these assets. As far as business intelligence, as the saying goes, everything is somewhere. And most business intelligence systems often lack that necessary spatial context. So integrating these systems with Geocortex will allow you to visualize your data for geographic areas of interest or push relevant spatial data into your third-party system. We'll see a great example of this in the next couple of slides. Document management. If there's important documentation that lives in a third-party system, a lot of times access to these systems is not always quick and easy. Integrating a document management system into Geocortex will allow you to link directly into documents that are related to a geographic feature. So this means you can query, download, and upload to your document management system from your mapping application, aggregating access to important information, or sorry, documentation. So this is a very important point. So just to kind of go back to what I said in the previous slide, so we can integrate with any system. Well, essentially, yes, we can. The complexity can vary, so sometimes it's easier than others, but technical challenges can always be overcome. The only challenges that we necessarily run into are licensing or terms conflicts or environmental restrictions that we can't really control. They're within the environment that we can't control or configure properly. So it really just, this is a question that our sales team gets questions on all the time. Is like, can you integrate with this? Can you integrate with that? And like I said, almost always the answer is yes. It's just a matter of discussing all of the finer points and working out all the technical details. But it just really just comes down to what type of interfaces the other system has. So we'll give you a couple of examples here. Suppose you wanted to integrate with a system that only has a Java API, so not .NET, no REST endpoint, no JavaScript. We could still create an integration by writing a Java program and run it as a Geocortex core role running as a Windows service. So Windows service, for example, so thereby allowing Geocortex Essentials to interact with something it directly understands. So just essentially writing that Java program that then can speak and run as a role that Essentials then understands. There's another example as well where a client was looking to integrate with Microsoft OneNote. So Microsoft has the existing APIs for this to work, but the client required that this integration be offline. So basically rendering those APIs unusable. The solution was finding a third-party library called Espose, I think it's actually pronounced, that allows a .NET application to interface directly with a locally stored Microsoft OneNote file. So we were able to kind of overcome that offline requirement. So as stated, complexity can vary, but almost all third-party systems have some sort of method to interface with. And we have a great team of developers on our professional services team here at Latitude Geographics that can provide consultation to discuss these implementation strategies. So let's talk about some client integrations. We're going to kind of speed through these because we're running out of time a little bit, but I'll try my best. So clients. So York Region, I'm going to start with these guys. They actually presented at a recent user group meeting. Love their story. I love how they overcame some of the challenges that they were faced with and integrated a pretty cool solution. So, so some of the challenges they were running into, they ran into more complex development projects, creating an increased number of applications that they needed to sort of manage, several isolated systems, preventing efficient management and tracking of application. A lot of time was spent manually distributing, tracking, and collating applications. Multiple entries of the same development information in several systems wasted time and led to conflicting data and inaccuracies. They also didn't have a method to view entire history or status of an application. So some of their vision before actually implementing anything, what they wanted, was a single. Their words were a single source of truth. So one system, one window to access it and enter in development information, no matter what department or business unit they were in. They didn't want any more duplication of information at work. So once it's in the system, inform the actual planning process. So they wanted development information to be easily accessible to staff to make data-driven decisions, including spatial analysis. They also wanted to enhance customer service. So they wanted information, documents, and reports to be accessible from outside their walls. So they needed a web-based system. Most importantly, they wanted the new system to be more user-friendly, streamline processes, intuitive to use, and just simply comfortable using every day. They also wanted something that they could share with other local municipalities if needed. So solution. So build an in-house solution using Salesforce and Esri with Geocortex Essentials. So high level, the viewer is embedded inside Salesforce, acting as a single system. Any changes are synchronous. Users can create, delete, and modify in either system, and updates are made real time. A Salesforce security provider within Essentials handles SSO to both systems. Basically what that means is in Geocortex Essentials, you can create a custom security provider for any number of systems, but in this case, it would prompt the user, when you open the Geocortex viewer, it would prompt the user for Salesforce credentials, and then you would be directed into the viewer. And then there were some workflows that were created to run some spatial analysis on the data. So so just a little bit on the back end, it utilizes multiple Salesforce components. There's a streaming API, there's an Ajax toolkit API, the console API to communicate with the viewer. So the streaming API listens for events on Salesforce for creation, updates, and deletes, and sends the corresponding events to the Geocortex viewer. So, for example, when the status of an application changes, it's expected that the symbology of said application changes on the map at the same time. So the streaming API listens for the status change of the application and sends the same update to the GIS feature. Once received, the symbology changes based on this new status. So just a little bit on the workflow that I created. So the workflow runs some spatial analysis to determine intersecting information for a site plan. So the results of this analysis were then sent back to Salesforce for display, keeping all details about the application in a single location, which is the key to all of this. This is just a screenshot of the interface. You can see that it's like a custom-built solution where you can pop this window in and out of Salesforce. This background here is Salesforce. This is obviously our viewer. Any changes made in the viewer are reflected in Salesforce and vice versa. So we'll go through a couple of examples here. Let's start with City of Alexandria. So they've integrated with Laserfiche. Essentially, they have located a feature on the map. Plan drawings are pulled directly from Laserfiche. You can also link directly into Laserfiche to look at sort of inside of Laserfiche's environment to complete any tasks that you need to complete. So here's the application here. I want to menu, and then I'm just going to find the plat by address just because that's the demonstration here. 12 Alexander. Notice the autocomplete, so returns all the plats on that street. So you have two options here. You can view the plan drawing. So this just opens up a URL parameter and links directly to a plan drawing from Laserfiche. You can see the ID is there. That would be the replacement token. So here's the drawing. Or you could link directly inside Laserfiche. So this opens up the Laserfiche application, and you can make changes there. So any changes you make within Laserfiche then is updated back to the map and vice versa. Okay, so as another example, Pitkin County, they have an application that has a variety of methods to find data on the map. So you have the option to extract data from a geodatabase, a shapefile, or drawing files from FME. FME is a business intelligence system that's one of the leading business intelligence systems in North America, I think. So let's go into the map again, Pitkin County, disclaimer there. Excuse me. So I want to menu, clip and ship, they called it. A little disclaimer on the file sizes and where it's being stored. So you can see all the options here that they have to find information on the map's quite extensive. So we can do address again. 215 Edgewood. Confirming my selection here. So this is really neat. So you can choose first your data format. So if you want it in shapefile, geodatabase, or drawing files, they're all pulled from FME. So I'll just choose this. I'll choose open spaces and parks. You have the option to pull out the imagery or contour layers. I won't fill this out because I did this previously just to save time. But let me see. Oops, I actually closed it. My apologies. I did fill it out. Essentially, what happens is you fill information and then they email you the package. I had it ready, but I closed it accidentally. So the email package, in this case, it would just be a zip file filled with the appropriate drawing files. I'll show one more example, Tableau. So this is with the Alberta Energy Regulator. So it provides, again, a variety of methods to find energy assets on the map. And then it uses URL parameters to open reports from Tableau. Disclaimer here. So I'm going to zoom in to where some assets are. See the pipelines here. I'm just going to find some data on the map. So just do an identify here. Eventually. Okay, and so in here we have a lot of results, but if I just choose show asset report, it will open up Tableau and allows me to interface with that system. So we have some information here. I can perform some actions, and again, any actions I take here will then be reflected back on the map and vice versa. So just to save time here, I'm just going to skip over. I had one other example that interface with Amanda. It's another good integration example, but we'll have to skip it for now. I wanted to mention this quick. This is especially useful for anyone who is not currently a Geocortex client. Head over to this. This is our new Discovery Center. There is demonstration videos, a guided tour, just tutorials and customer stories and stuff like that. So it's really, really useful that way. Contact information for us as well. Wanted to say this as well. The user conference, it's live this year. Previous years it was a virtual conference, but this year we're actually going to be in Washington. More information here at this URL. And if you want to contact us about this event, events@latitudegeo.com. And thank you for joining us today. Hopefully this gets your mind thinking about various ways you can integrate your systems with Geocortex and how this would enable you to get things done and kind of streamline some existing processes that may be inefficient today. So if you have any questions, let me know. We've run out of time for Q&A, but if you have any questions, email me, pvanharen@latitudegeo.com. Thank you again for joining me, and hope to see you soon. Okay, take care.